All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else, and the video I'm bringing today, we are going to go over the 5.2.3 patch notes. I already had a sneak peek at them. They look pretty solid. So we're going to go through the changes like we always do. We're going to discuss the PvP changes and the combat changes as far as what they are, how I think they're going to look, and then I'm going to go on to the PTS quite a bit this week now that we actually have some pretty good patch notes on where we're going to be at. So with that being said, guys, let's dive into it. This PTS, they're going to be testing the Mid-Year Mayhem. As you guys know, it got canceled this year because they didn't think that their servers could handle it. We now have the Murkmire celebration that they're going to be working on as well. Template information, combat and gameplay, housing, quests and zones, delves. Necromancer. Here we go. Gravelord, Boneyard. Increase the damage per tick of this ability and its morphs by 20%. Now, guys, as you know, they reduced dots basically across the board in week 1 by about 50%, and then they said that they were going to increase dots by, what did they say? I wanted to say they were going to increase them by 20 to 30% across the board, which was going to turn out to be like a 30% overall nerf from Scalebreaker. Now, if that doesn't make any sense, basically whatever the dots are now, they're saying that the dots as of this patch are going to be 30% less. So I think that's a pretty good spot. I've talked about it in a few videos that I felt like 25 to 30% is a good spot to test. At the end of the day, I don't know if it's going to be good. It's going to be a hell of a lot better than what it currently is. I do like dots doing damage. I don't like dots carrying damage. And so I think this is definitely a good place to start, and we'll have to try it on the PTS and check out the tooltips and everything and give that information to you guys. So so this is going to be one item of a very long list of dots being buffed. And so when you guys see this, you're like, well, why are they buffing it again? Keep in mind, the dots should still be less than what they currently are in Scalebreaker. So Frozen Colossus. The major vulnerability from this ability and its morphs now lasts 8 seconds after dealing any damage, rather than 3 seconds after the final smash. Enemies hit by major vulnerability cannot be affected again for 20 seconds after it applies, to prevent situations where this debuff could be kept up indefinitely by rotating an army of necromancers. So, I've talked to a few people about this change, and here are my thoughts. And once again, guys, I'm not saying I'm right. This is just my initial thoughts. I got the patch notes today like the rest of you guys. This looks like it's more of a PvE change than a PvP change. And so currently necromancers can stack vulnerability ults and trials. And so that's basically, for a little bit now, people have just been running necromancers because the group utility of providing major vulnerability to your group and just alternating buffs is very, very powerful. So now, if you provide major vulnerability, it can only last for 8 out of 20 seconds, meaning that you don't need as many necromancers as you currently do, so you get more trial viability that way. Now, the first week of this patch note change, they had major vulnerability applied to the last tick, which was honestly going to be terrible for PvP. I talked about it. I do like the idea of an ultimate giving major vulnerability in a PvP aspect, but if it's going to be on the last tick, it's going to be very, very tough to use. And so from a PvP perspective, I kind of think that this is strong. This is very strong from a PvP perspective, because if you hit somebody with this, they have 8 seconds of major vulnerability. 8 seconds. That is a long time to be taking a lot of damage. It's in the same vein as having Onslaught giving 12 seconds of full penetration. So 8 seconds to do this much more damage. Keep in mind that it's also a debuff on the person, and so anybody that's fighting that person that gets hit by that is now doing this damage. It's not just the person that casted it. So this is obviously a very large buff for necromancers. So for magic and necromancers, this is very nice and very much needed, because honestly, a lot of things in their toolkit are kind of lacking. For group play, this is going to be ridiculous. Like, this is going to be really, really good. So if you get hit by this, you really have to be on your toes, and you have to be careful for 8 seconds, because 8 seconds of spin to win, 8 seconds of executes, 8 seconds of D-swings is going to be tough to deal with. So very, very large change. On paper, like I said, I think reducing this from 8 seconds to 5 seconds makes a lot of sense. Put it the same way Onslaught is. You get 5-6 seconds of pen, get 5-6 seconds of major vulnerability. It's the same thing with Heme Jaws, where you get major brutality. You get 5 seconds now. So I think I would put them all in line with each other that way, and maybe reduce the cooldown for PvE. So instead of 8 out of 20, it's like 5 out of 15. Just in my head, I think that would be a little bit better. But like, if you're a Necromancer, this is very, very good for you. This is very good. Rapid Rot, increase the damage bonus from this passive to 15%, up from 10%. I'm pretty sure Rapid Rot is the 10% increased dot damage, and so they buffed Necromancers by 5% by having this. So now they can do more dots. I think it's fine. I think it makes sense that you want your Necromancers to do like weird dot damage. It makes a lot of sense. However, the Necromancer dot toolkit is very, very weird in PvP. I think it's Detonating Siphon. I think it's the one that you cast on the ground. People just move out of the way of it too easily. You don't cast it on anybody. And so when you're running, when you think about running like a dot-based build in PvP on a Necromancer, you have to use a lot of like weapon-based damage over time effects, because, the ones... honestly, I don't think the ones in the class skill line are very good. So I think this is, once again, more of a PvE adjustment than PvP. But at the same time, like, it does make dot-based stam necros, or just necros in general, a lot more powerful by having a 5% class passive up from 10%. Reusable parts increase the cost reduction granted from this passive to 25-50%, up from 12-25%. This is huge. I've talked about it in the past. Necromancer is hard to sustain. It actually is. Like, compared to other classes, like running the same build, Necromancer is a little rough. And so this is actually huge. I'm pretty sure this is when you summon a Blast Bones, or... I think anytime like a thing on you dies, you get a cost reduction for your next ability cast. So this is actually a very, very large amount. You're doubling the reduced cost. We'll have to go on the PTS and fully check out. I can't remember exactly what that passive does, but that is a huge amount of reduced cost that you get. Shocking Siphon, increase the damage per tick of this ability, its morphs by 20%. Like I said, Skeletal Mage, increase damage per hit of this ability and its morphs by 20%. Bone Tyrant, Disdain Harm, increase the damage reduction for this passive to 15%, up from 10%. Updated this passive to work more accurately with damage over time. So Necromancers get another buff here by a 15% reduction to damage over time effects. Once again, like, very, very powerful buffs for the Necromancer. I do think some of their offensive toolkits need to be reworked a little bit to be a little bit more functional. But as far as passives go, this is a very nice step in the right direction to put them in line with other classes as far as sustain goes. But like, very, very good changes for Necro. Combat and abilities. In response to much of your feedback, we have increased the standards of our damage over time abilities by 20% compared to the original pass in PTS 5.2.0 to better encompass the fact that there are many dead zones of time where these abilities fall off before you can reapply them. The overall goal is to reduce situations where running all damage over time abilities is the optimal way to play in order to obtain the most overall DPS, while still ensuring those playstyles are viable and can change up the pace of combat when compared to other ability types. Okay. Dragonite, Ardent Flame, Fiery Breath. Increase the damage per tick of the damage over time portion from this ability and its morphs by 50%. That's huge. That is a huge amount. Searing Heat. Fix an issue where this passive was not applying to Dragonite standard or its morphs. Update the tooltip to indicate it only increased the damage over time of the abilities listed rather than all of their damage. Searing Strike. Increase the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of this ability and its morphs by 33%. Repeating, of course. Okay. So DKs are interesting because they got the buff to the single target abilities, and then they also got a buff in their class passives to increase dot damage. And so I'm going to have to go look at it to see exactly where it's at, but it wouldn't surprise me if Dragonite dots, namely Searing Strike and Noxious Breath, Burning Breath, I always forget the name of that, I'm sorry. The Magic and Stamina form of both of them. It wouldn't surprise me if both of those dots end up being very close to what they currently are. So basically DK dots don't really get adjusted. Everybody else's do. So it wouldn't surprise me if that is the case. I will obviously, I want to do a video on DKs where I compare a build in Scale Breaker versus a build on the PTS, basically having the same gear. But if that's the case, Dragonites are going to be in a very, very good spot next patch, because they have ability to get pretty good burst damage with Molten Whip, and then having these dots up in your face are going to be very, very effective. So maybe we'll see people slowly moving away from playing a Templar and playing something else, because, something like this is actually pretty powerful. Earth and Heart Molten Weapons, Molten Armaments fix numerous issues where the heavy attack damage bonus from this morph was not applying to attacks it previously had, such as a Restoration Staff, excuse me, or your offhand dual wield attacks. All right. Nightblade, Assassination, Teleport Strike. Lotus Fan, increase the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of this morph by 20%. Once again, getting buffed. Path of Darkness, increase the damage by 20%. Summon Shade, increase the damage by 20%. They reverted the Shadow Image teleport range back to 28 meters, and always reflected on tooltip and ability bar. It will not be affected by range enhancement tools such as Battle Spirit, Reach, or Propelling Shield. That makes sense. So it's always 28 meters, so it can't be buffed. That makes a lot of sense. Veiled Strike. Reduce the cost of this ability in the Concealed Weapon morph to $22.95, down from $2,700, to ensure they stand out more appropriately as melee spammables, such as Lava Whip or its morph Surprise Attack. This is a very nice buff for Magicka Nightblade. Melee Magicka Nightblades. Concealed Weapon has been the not favorite spammable for Magblades for a long time, because the cost is just so much higher than Swallow Soul, and for the cost you're not getting the reward of doing more damage. They're very similar in damage. Like Swallow Soul and Concealed are very similar, and then you have range versus up close and personal, and when you're wearing a light armor build, you'd rather be at range anyways. And so this is a very nice change, allowing you to potentially sustain and dish out more damage up close and personal, which we've talked about before. I kind of feel like you should have that ability to do, and so this is going to help a lot for melee Magblade builds. I don't know. I wouldn't say that they're back, but this is a very nice buff for them, in my opinion. Siphoning Cripple, increase the damage per tick of this ability. It's morphs by 20%. Bolt Escape, Ball of Lightning. This morph no longer stuns enemies at its end location. It does retain the new addition of gaining Snare and Immobilize immunity after casting to help stand this morph out as a defensive escape tool. Okay? Fixed an issue where this morph is only absorbing spell-based projectiles rather than any, as the tooltip indicates. Streak. This morph now continues to stun enemies at your location, in addition to stunning enemies behind you after ending. Note that the damage still only applies to enemies you pass through. Alright? Lightning Splash, increase the damage by 20%. We see a recurring theme here. Bound Armor, Bound Armaments, increase the damage that each dagger deals by approximately 21%. I tested this in week 1. You guys can go back and check out my video if you want for Bound Armaments. It was already doing pretty good damage. In the week 1 of the PTS. Like I want to say I had like a 18k tooltip on a pseudo build. Over the 5 daggers. I think it was like 18k total. This is very nice. So yeah, like Bound Armaments looks really solid for Stam Sork. Summon Unstable Familiar, increase the damage per hit of this ability and its morphs by basic attacks by 20%. Increase the damage of the pulse attack from this morph and the volatile familiar morph by 20%. Summon Winged Twilight, increase the damage per hit of this ability and its morphs by 20%. Alright, so we're seeing Pet Sorks making a small comeback here in the damage that they're being provided. Okay. I'm gonna go look at this, but I don't. The Winged Twilight shouldn't heal you for as much as it does, and it shouldn't do a ton of damage. And so I guess we'll have to go and look and see exactly how much damage this Winged Twilight is doing. But they talk about. I understand it's a toggle. Like I understand you have to have it on both bars, and I understand you have to cast it. I understand, it dies. I get that it is a lot, and it should do some damage. It absolutely should. I'm just curious as to how much it is, because it shouldn't do what it was in elsewhere, in my opinion. So we'll go look at that and see where that's at. But I know Wing Twilight and Scalebreaker was pretty low. It's just 20% is quite a bit. So we'll see what that is. Adric Spear, Luminous Shards decreased the base cost of this morph to 43.20 down from 49.50. Note that it still continues to decrease in cost based on rank, down to 40.50 at rank 4. All right. Blazing Spear now increased the total damage dealt by 20% compared to base ability rather than 10%. Spear Shards increased the damage per tick of the damage over time from this ability. It's morphs by 50%. All right. Dawn's Wrath, Sunfire increased damage per tick of the damage over time abilities from this portion. Ability is morphs by 33%. Solar Barrage increased it by 22%. Cleansing Ritual. Ritual Retribution, this is the damage dealing morph. It now once again deals damage equal to the healing coefficient. Okay. Warden changes. Animal Companions. Dive. This ability and its morphs now set the target off balance if you're 7 meters or further, rather than 12 meters. This is a good change. I talked about this in my video. It just seemed like 12 meters was a little bit too far away. I like this a lot better. Cutting Dive. We need to go into the stamina morphs because I never discussed them in my previous video either. Increase the damage of the bleed by approximately 43% per tick. That's ridiculous. Okay, we'll have to take a peek at that too. Swarm. Increase the damage over time from this ability by 20%. Winter's Embrace, Impaling Shards. Reduce cost of the ability morphs to 32.40 down from 45.36 since the primary function of this ability is utility rather than damage. Winter's Revenge. Increase the damage of this morph by approximately 80%. This will allow it to stand out from other damage over time abilities. Alright. Cleave. Increase the damage per tick of the damage over time portion from this morph by 50%. Alright. Critical Charge. Stampede. Increase the damage per tick of the damage over time portion of this morph by approximately 38%. So you see dots coming up. Increased damage on Blade Cloak. Increased damage by 33% on Twin Slashes. Healing on Blood Craze increased by 33%. We're just going to fly through this part because there's no point. Increased damage over time on Poison Injection by 33%. Poison Injection morph. This morph now applies its execute bonus to the entire ability rather than only the damage over time. Ooh. Wow. Okay. So, for those of you guys that don't know, Poison Injection has a direct damage aspect as well as a damage over time aspect. This is huge. Like this is very big. So when you drop below 50% health, that I think is the execute qualifier, you can do 100% more damage currently with Poison Injection. And so it is a very nice damage over time effect that gets better as you do burst, and like it helps you finish off targets very well. Now, what they're saying is that upfront damage can now be execute-based damage to where it can do 100% more if they're at low health. So this is very intriguing for ranged bow builds because not only is it a damage over time execute, but now it is a long range execute. And I know it's not a ton of damage, but like if you can get, a crit for like 7k or something like that with a bow ability, you go snipe into a either a crossbow or, I'm at a loss. Ellie weapon. You do your snipe, light attack, Ellie weapon, and then you hit them with a poison injection when they're at low health, and then you get the execute damage there. I think that could actually be pretty effective. So we'll go look at this as well. But this is a very nice change, and it does make sense that the upfront damage should also do some execute damage. Volley got increased in damage. Destructive Touch did. Wall of Elements. Destructive Touch by 33%. Wall of Elements by 20%. Soul Trap got increased by 20%. 50% for Infectious Claws for the Werewolf. Transformation. Increased damage over time from this morph's bleed by approximately 24%. All right, so some buffs for werewolves. I know they got dropped down quite a bit. Let's see where that's at too. Trap Beast is increased by 33%. Entropy is increased by 20%. Scalding Rune is increased by 60%. All right. And then we got some gear sets fixed. Fixed multiple issues related to Ravage Health and Creeping Ravage Health poisons where they would perform incomparably between crafted versions and non-crafted versions. Okay. Fixed an issue that could cause Crown Lethal Poison and similar crafted potions to differ slightly in effect. All right. And then finally, item sets. Blood Drinker. Increase the damage bonus for bleed abilities to 33% up from 20%. It's very interesting, you know, making bleed or dot-based armor sets more powerful. So then you have to stack in. So if you want to do more dot damage, you have to build into it. So very interesting. Daring Corsair, this set will no longer scale in cost reduction with the item level, similar to other sets such as Seducer or Alteration Mastery. All right. Deadly Strike, increase the damage bonus for this set to 20% up from 14%, which is a pretty substantial buff. Very substantial. And so you see all these dot changes. And so we're going to have to go and, you know, look at these changes with these gear sets and everything. But like you see these, you're still going to have hard-hitting dots, you know, if you build into doing dot damage like with Deadly Strike. 20% damage bonus is no joke. So, yeah. Ravager fixed an issue where destruction staves from the set dropped at the improper item level. All right. Why is Ravager dropping destruction staves? That's the main question. Yeah. And that's it. So overall, guys, I like these patch notes a lot better. I wanted to see where the dots were before I went on the PTS to test things. Now that we see where they're at, we're going to go on there, and then I'm going to compare a build on the PTS compared to what I have currently, and we'll just compare damage over time versus, you know, whatever, and kind of see where it falls in line. And we'll also just go over some of the class changes. We'll do some of the gear set reviews, all that sort of thing, and get you guys updated information as well as possible. But overall, like, I think these changes are pretty good. You know, a 30% reduction in dots from Scalebreaker is a pretty good spot to start. They give the class identity of DKs being the dot-based class by providing it in their passives and buffing their dots a little bit more. Necro's got very nice bonuses. Like if you're a Necromancer right now, you should be pretty happy because you need some help in the PvP aspects, and you got a lot of help. You know, got a lot of help. And so the Bound Armors change for Stamsork's obviously very nice. Nightblade Shadow Image changes are also nice. I don't know why we keep increasing the cost on Shadow Image. Like we just increased it, and now they want to increase it more. But it is what it is. I get it. It's a powerful skill. But pretty good patch notes in my opinion. Wanted to get your guys' opinion. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.